Welcome to Bicycle Retail Radio, presented by the National Bicycle Dealers Association. Bicycle Retail Radio brings together retailers, vendors, advocates, and thought leaders for honest discussions about the latest issues facing bicycle retailers. The podcast dives deep into the challenges and triumphs of the bicycle industry, providing an in-depth look at the person behind the profession. Aiming to deliver content that's both relatable and thought-provoking, offering real-world tips and insights to help you find success in the bicycle industry. There's a human side of the business, and the podcast aims to share stories, experiences, and strategies that you can apply in your own shop. Whether you're looking for inspiration, practical advice, or a sense of community, you've come to the right place. The National Bicycle Dealer Association has a rich history of supporting retailers across the nation. Founded in 1946 with a mission to strengthen specialty bicycle retailers through education, through research, through communication, and through advocacy. The National Bicycle Dealer Association is proudly supported by our members and our membership. If you'd like to learn more about the benefits of joining, please visit nbda.com.
Hello, listeners. In this episode, I am thrilled to welcome Amanda Carey, president of the National Interscholastic Cycling Association, known as NICA, to explore the powerful ways NICA and local bicycle retailers can work together to inspire and support the next generation of cyclists. NICA's programs are bringing thousands of youth into the sport, and my hope is that this conversation will give local bike shop owners a deeper understanding of how they can join this movement to grow ridership, drive in-store traffic, and build very loyal relationships with young riders and their families. I do hope you enjoy. Amanda, thank you for coming on Bicycle Retail Radio. Welcome.
Hi, happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, the NBDA, we are thrilled with our relationship with NICA. We've been very thankful to work with NICA as an educational partner to make sure our retailers and the industry is aware of NICA and how we all need to get involved. So this conversation is going to be deep. So we got a lot to get into today. Thanks for taking your time. I want to start right off the bat, Amanda, if you don't mind, and just break down some barriers. Our listeners who might not know about NICA or even about you, just to get a little more familiar. Your background is extensive. I know that you've been in the cycling industry for years, but I would like to just know more and share with our listeners your background experience and how you got involved in NICA.
Sure. Well, maybe to start, again, thanks for having me. I love talking about NICA, so any opportunity I get, happy to be here. And, starting off in NICA, and we were talking about this before we started recording, I'm always astonished at how few people know we exist. So we are the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. We are a mission-based nonprofit that started in 2009, and we do youth mountain biking programs across the United States. And so we do cross-country, so it's team-based cross-country mountain biking for student athletes in grades 6 to 12 all across the United States. And we have 26,000 student athletes and 15,000 volunteer coaches in the program right now. So our footprint is pretty big. So we've impacted the cycling industry, and I think just cycling as a sport in general in ways that we can see now, and in untold ways we'll see in the future. But again, we've been around since 2009 and continue to grow, and are hopefully you're going to keep on that growth trajectory in the future. And about me and my background, I got started in NICA as a volunteer, back in it was 2015. We heard, because I'm in Idaho, so I'm talking to you from Victor, Idaho. NICA is a fully remote organization, so it's my home office. And in 2015, my husband and I heard that this, organization NICA was coming to town. We had no idea what it was, and we looked into it a little bit and learned about it. And ultimately, after learning about NICA, what it was all about, we looked at each other and just said, we have got to start a team. This just sounds really exciting, because my background is I was a professional racer for a little bit. I was an ultra endurance racer. Prior to that, I had a long career in nonprofit. So I've been an IMBA chapter executive director. I've worked for cycling and pedestrian advocacy organizations. I've worked for other nonprofits as well too. But nothing really seemed to be as I don't know, it's just this calling to having an impact on something in cycling in a way that I'd never had before. It was NICA, right? My husband had been a mechanic for many years on the road with Giant, and we were both kind of wrapping out our I wouldn't even call it a career, right? Our time and his time in racing and my time in racing too, when this came on our radars, and it very quickly became just the most important thing I think that we've ever done. We started and ran a team together for 8 years, and so a lot of what I talk about, and I will talk about, to the folks that are listening today, comes directly from my experience of being a head coach and a team director in the NICA organization for many years. Because again, I think the most important people in our organization, I don't think they get as much credit as they deserve, are our volunteer coaches. And so most everything that I do and have done, and how I lead NICA and how I frame NICA, comes from that direct experience of, starting a team and working with the kids and doing it as a family endeavor.
That firsthand experience with NICA, there is nothing like that. And I also was a coach and started a team in New York, and I can kind of resonate with what you're saying. It leaves a lasting impression. And just, I think your history with NICA puts you as a perfect person to be the president of the organization. The stats there, since 2009, founded in 2009, and 26,000 kids right now are part of NICA. Congratulations. That's huge. You're making a huge impact.
I think collectively we are, right? I mean, I think as an organization, we are just, I think, scratching the surface of the impact that we can have, because I think what we've known is, and I'll take a step back and say this. NICA first, I think, most importantly identifies as a youth development organization, right? We're a character development organization. Our core values are fun, inclusivity, equity, respect, and community. And everything we do is really built on character development and giving these kids and these coaches and families the experience of something that's going to be lifelong. The endeavor to be a lifelong cyclist is really what we're looking for. And again, we just so happen to do it through cross-country mountain biking, but that collective impact, that footprint of the organization, I think, yeah, we can talk metrics of how many kids have participated. We're almost at 100,000 graduates at this point. But I think it's most important to remember the type of impact that we're having, right? In this group of kids that have come through NICA with these amazing coaches and these amazing core values, and the focus on fun, and the focus on inclusivity, and the focus on just showing up as who you are and riding to the level that you want. I think that's the lasting impact that we're having on cycling in general. So we've got multiple, now generations of kids that have had this introduction to cycling, it be in the most positive, inclusive way, and they're taking that into their communities in the future, whether it's their jobs, whether it's their local riding clubs. They know what fun is, they know what inclusivity is, they know what it's like to be part of something bigger. And that's really, I think, what we're most proud of is the impact that we're having on these kids and families' lives.
Yeah, and we are recording in December of 2024, and I think right now, as the cycling industry, we need to get more people on the bicycle. We need to introduce more kids at an earlier age to just the powerful journey that a bicycle can, provide for you. And what you're doing at NICA, I mean, the part that you were just mentioning, that every youth is part of a thriving and engaged cycling community. I think that's your vision, and it's true. I mean, as a past coach, I could watch athletes or youth that entered the program who maybe wanted to win a race, maybe winning wasn't important to them as much as just being out there, but they felt part of something much bigger, and that's pretty awesome. What you're doing is really, really important. I mean, do you feel that now that you're getting more engagement, as we kind of experienced this boom and then we dropped off a little bit in 2024? Where do you feel like the engagement levels are? Are you finding that new families are finding NICA?
Yeah. It's a layered question. I want to be careful to answer it, I think, in different ways. I think generally our growth has slowed down, right? I think we had, and many was familiar with NICA's early trajectory. We had those boom years where some years, I mean, it was a little bit of hold on to your hats growth of 25, 30% growth. The organization was doubling in size annually, and it was a lot. We were also starting in places in locations where mountain biking was already a known, accepted, and supported sport, right? Places like Colorado and Utah, in Northern California, though Idaho. These are places that mountain biking was in the culture. So as we've grown, that growth is becoming harder, right? That growth is we are competing for places to ride, right? There is definitely an impact on how much access we have to trails and how many trails there are to ride. That impacts the growth of a league or how many kids can ride. But then we've also stepped into new places, I think, for good reason, right? Because our assumption is mountain biking is good and fun for everybody, not just in certain states, right? So we have developed leagues in the Midwest, right? We're in Kansas and Nebraska, recently in Mississippi, in places where mountain biking may not be the mainstream sport or even known. And NICA is actually playing a really important role in driving trail construction. And that's really good news, I think, for all mountain bikers. But I think going back big picture, kids are playing fewer sports. And that is concerning just across the United States. I mean, across the world, quite frankly, where some of the recent research and data and studies that are coming out right now, it's abundantly clear that we have a mental health crisis in the United States specific to youth. And I think a lot of it is, we know a lot of it why. It's social media, it's phones, it's relationships are being developed on screens, not in person. And when I look at the hope for the growth of the organization in the future, that's really how we are trying to tell that story of this is bigger than mountain biking, right? This really is about mental health, about friendships, about connection, about bringing kids into environments where they're finding acceptance, they're finding connection, they are getting an introduction to the outdoors, and they're doing it with great mentors and really positive in-person support. So I think that growth, I mean, it feels to me like we're in almost a, crisis in the United States where we need this call to action of we need sports and we need opportunities in programs like NICA to help solve this crisis that's been emerging. And I think we know what the solutions are, but boy, if you don't do it, and kids are, I wouldn't say, they're pretty selective, right? They know right off the bat if something's fun and they will tell you if it's not. And
Yeah.
so the getting them, into sports like NICA, that growth right now is, we should be all really dedicated to that endeavor, because again, it's something that's bigger than just cycling itself.
At Jamis, we love being in the bike business. We've been at it for decades, but for us, it's not just about product. It's about partnerships, and we view our retailers as partners, not competitors. Strong margin structures and simple programs make doing business easy, and we offer full margin on our all-access consumer web orders. We invite you to visit the Contact Us section of jamisbikes.com for more information about being a Jamis retailer. And a special thank you to NBDA for helping unite the bike industry. Collaboration drives evolution.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm hopeful that the retailers that are listening, that maybe some of the brands listening, or just the riders who are listening, do hear the message and the opportunity and share what they learned in today's podcast. I'd like to rewind just a little bit, because I think I didn't ask you enough just about the NICA programs. And so I know there's high school, I think there's a middle school program, there's even a new GRIT program, which is focused on women and girls. Could you just do an overview for us, Amanda?
Yeah, sure. So NICA, essentially, you think about how our programming works, it really is based on the NICA team, right? So we have just about 1,050 teams across the United States right now. And most of student athletes interaction happens at a team practice, right? So we have races, and it's and not to discount racing. Racing is very important, but we like to more describe it as competition, right? So you have your membership in the team, you function as a team, you've got your coaches, you've got your kids, and those teams go and they participate in events. Now, in addition, you have your season. There's lots of other programming going on. So we have the GRIT initiative, which is our girls riding together. It's our specific initiative to welcome more girls and women into the sport, and that's had a great impact. And most of it is based on specific invitation to girls and women, and it is actually simpler than you think, but we've been really successful there, having girls only events, girls only mechanics clinics, girls only rides. It's not always girls only, but by really paying attention to that specific invitation, we have increased our girls' participation rate from 18% to almost 25% across the organization in the last 6 years. And that's really something to be celebrated, because it took a lot of hard work and belief. And GRIT continues to be, again, one of the best things that we do. We also have a teen trail core program. And again, and to pause here and let everyone know, all of these programs happen within the team environment and also at the league environment too. But our Teen Trail Corps program is also another optional and additional program where kids can earn service hours through doing service projects, trail projects at the community level. So last year total, and I would guess that this is maybe half our total because a lot of our teams don't count it in our system, the organization collectively did 50,000 volunteer hours of trail work, and this is on their local trails. And so for Teen Trail Corps, we have the ability for kids to learn more than just about riding bikes. They can learn about service, they can work about trail work. A lot of it's partnering with their local trails organizations and making sure that they learn just as much about stewardship and taking care of the trails as they do riding. And then we also have an adventure program. Adventure is it's essentially experiential education. It's opportunities for kids to interact off the race course, right? So it's group rides, adventure rides, a lot of team building stuff. We call them sandwich rides, right? Where you prepare kids for the day, you pack a sandwich and go off. So we have a lot of different ways for the student athlete that say doesn't want to race or wants to do things in addition to racing to participate in NICA. Because again, like I said, way back at the beginning, our focus is cyclists for life, and we understand that kids and coaches to engage in cycling in a lot of different ways. And our goal and our job is to really introduce them to as many formats as we can, into contributing to their cycling community. So lots of different ways, but again, everything in NICA is based on the team, which again is the most important thing to kids at this age, at 6th to 12th grade range. They want to do what their friends are doing. They don't want to do the individual sport, right? So whatever it is they're getting their core group of people doing, that's really what speaks to them, and that's what keeps it fun. So everything is still based in the team structure.
Excellent, Amanda. Thank you for that. And then, we hosted a webinar with your team recently and speaking to retailers on how they could work with NICA. And some of the questions that came up were as simple as, is there a NICA league in my state? And just so for those listening, you can go to nationalmtb.org, community and leagues. And Amanda, is that the best resource of finding all the leagues that exist now, or even how to start a league, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's your best place. You'll find all that information there.
Yeah, and we'll link to that in the show notes. So Amanda, then let's go over to how bicycle retailers could support NICA teams and youth cycling overall. We did a webinar on it, but as I said, since I have you here for our podcast listeners, I'd like to give our listeners who are retailers more of an idea of how they could work with NICA.
Sure. Well, gosh, I think the most important thing I want any local bike shop or any retailer to understand is that they are potentially a very, very important part of the whole NICA team ecosystem. As I spent so much time talking about the team environment, it doesn't have to be a big, huge commitment on a local bike shop. It really can be as simple as call your local head coach, because I'll tell you the busiest person I've ever met in NICA is your local head coach, right? So the likelihood that they're going to reach out to you is probably pretty small, but boy, would they love a phone call from you saying, we're here, how we can, or how can we help?
Yeah.
And one of the best things you can do is really understand that in that NICA ecosystem, a lot of things need to come together to make that team successful. And they need help with bikes. They need help with equipment. They need help with knowing when they need a new chain, knowing when they need new tires. And the majority of NICA coaches, we don't have mechanic skills. And not only that, we don't have time for it. And I would say selfishly, one of the worst ways to start off your practice session where you only have an hour and a half is, you take off and you have a broken chain or a flat tire right off the bat. So, and I say that jokingly, it does happen, but I think the local bike shop and retailer really needs to understand that we need you. Like, we really need you to be a part of this ecosystem to help support that student athlete and that family, especially when they're new riders. So a lot of different things that you can do. Give some examples that are easy things. Reach out to that local team and offer to hold an event or hold a team night. One of the best things that my team used to do every year was right in preseason. We had a local shop, and we'd switch shops because we have multiple here, where the shop would stay open 1 hour later than their closing time, and they would have the hour just for the kids on the team. The first half hour would be a fix a flat clinic, right? So they'd walk us through some basic mechanics. And then the rest of the half an hour, they'd give like 5% off in the store to the rest of the kids, right? But it's really thinking of ways that your local shop can put on an event. It's as simple as maybe ordering a couple pizzas and inviting the kids in, teach them how to fix a chain, teach them how to fix a flat. Discounts are, of course, always optional, but it's really thinking about ways that you can use your shop as a meeting space or as a place for the kids in the team to feel invited. A lot of local shops will host their opening team meeting for the year at the shop, and then creating the relationships, I think, is the most important thing. As a head coach, and again, my husband's a pro mechanic, he was a head coach too. We want to send the riders to you all, right? We definitely want the local bike shop to be the ones responsible for the fixing, the education, the purchases, the new equipment. And so that's really what I mean about that ecosystem, is that teams can do it, but we're not very good at it. And we also don't want to do it, right? We want to make sure that the experts in the space, as your local bike shops, are the ones creating the relationships with the families and the kids. And I think that's really the most important part, is them recognizing that they don't have to coach, they don't have to come to events, but really being part of that ecosystem takes a little bit of that intentional invitation. And there's a lot of ways they can do that. And again, an event is probably the easiest place to start.
I love that. Yeah, I can totally see that would be an easy thing to do, to host an event and to bring in the community. And when you get the NICA athlete, you also get the family, and the word of mouth, I have found, just spreads so quickly. Any success stories of how supporting NICA directly impacted sales, or any retailers who have just been like, this is a really important part of what we're doing, that you can think of off the top of your head?
Yeah, I can think of many. I don't have metrics from specific shops, but what I can say is if you can take the long-term view with working with NICA teams, you're looking at really developing a future customer base, right? It's not just with the one kid that's coming into the store, it's the entire family. I mean, we know on average, and I wrote some metrics down just so I could share them. When we survey our parents and our coaches, we know that 90% of them spend on average, or sorry, the minimum they spend is $2,000 a year on bike parts. I mean, that's 90% of our families. That clicks up to 26% of them spend over $5,000 a year on bike parts. So these are definitely your future customers. And again, I'm not an expert in business, but I do know when you set up that customer relationship, they have money to spend, but they are not going to spend that money in your shop unless it's, I mean, everyone here knows business, right? It's that welcoming environment. You're catering to their needs, not what you want to sell them. And so I think that that's one really important part of the NICA community, is understanding that we have massive purchasing power, and it's about 100 million a year collectively that NICA, with volunteers, coaches, and families, spends across the cycling industry. So it can't be specific to shops, but I can tell you that that is the purchasing power. And we have a goal to grow to 100,000 student athletes in our program within the next 10 years. So that growth, we're hoping, is only going to continue, but it certainly can't continue unless we have, the equipment and, like we said, those really important members of the ecosystem. But I will say also that there's a different impact for shop owners and everyone to think about too, which is these interested kids and families that get introduced to bike shops. And I'll run out of fingers counting the kids over the years that went from the NICA team to working in the local bike shop, to having an interest in mechanics, an interest in the business, right? So there's those rings of impact that ripple outside of just getting, a kid interested in being a first-time customer. You're really looking at, I think it's that long-term impact of, we are really trying to grow for all of our reasons, right? We're mission-based character development organization. It's right for, what kids need and their futures, but it's undeniable the impact of the economic impact that we're having on the cycling industry. So just know that purchasing power is huge. It is growing. And we've also heard that, excuse me, when we self-survey, and I say we just give surveys to our attendees at the end of every season, 80% of them tell us that they are more likely to purchase from a NICA supporter or a NICA partner than not.
Wow.
So we know generally high level what they're purchasing and what their spending habits are. And I think, again, it's then now the local bike shop, the retailers, and everyone to kind of pick up what that opportunity is.
Yeah, yeah, I love that you brought up the case of the NICA athlete who ends up working at the local bicycle retailer. I mean,
Mhm.
we've seen this time and time again, and several retailers have told me just of that happening. And I guess I would go back to where you started, which was just reaching out to the league director and introducing yourself as a retailer and say you want to get involved. And I think that
Yeah.
relationship can naturally bloom. Um, I mean, I have to ask you something that's a little bit icky, but it's something that has come up a conversation with some retailers, is just the concern about NICA promoted discounts for riders, which we know with margins being what they are now can be a pain point for some retailers. Is this still the case? Has approach to discounts changed at all? Just what should we know there as retailers? And I hate to ask you an icky question, but since I have you, I thought I'd just ask you.
Oh yeah, and not icky at all. Quite frankly, it's I wouldn't say it's easy to address, but we also recognize running a bike shop, running especially a small bike shop, local bike dealer, is hard. It is hard times, and COVID made it even harder. So we not only recognize that, we always endeavor to be really good partners, and I would say this on the receiving end of things. So um, promoting discounts, I think in my mind is a little bit different than going out there seeking them and asking for them. So I think at the high level, what we try to do is pass on discounts that come from our high level partners that they want to see go to coaches and to student athletes. And I'll tell you, most of the focus that we have now in the discounts, we hope to push towards the adults, towards the coaches. That, believe it or not, is a very, very helpful motivator to create a critical person in our organization, which is the volunteer coach. I mean, just to give you an example, when I was a team director and a head coach, I probably volunteered 400 hours a year of my time. I loved it. It was fantastic. But boy, it was busy. And so the idea that we're rewarding folks with discounts, I think can't be undersold. I absolutely understand that it does impact the local bike dealer. But when we look at the 15,000 coaches that we have, they are the reason why this organization runs and continues to run. And so those discounts typically are most enjoyed by the coaches. And again, those are the ones that are out there volunteering with the kids and riding and being really good mentors. And I'll also say, this is a side note, but I can't not bring it up. I have met so many, kids are so detailed oriented, right? So, and I'm an ex-pro, my husband's a mechanic. We're bike nerds, and we spend a lot of money on our bikes for good reason, makes us really happy. But boy, every single practice, if I showed up on a different color pedal if I had a different derailleur, half of my team would pick up on it. They know,
Yeah.
they're watching everything that the coaches do. And so again, I don't need to get too off track on the discount question, but it is a good one. And so, but we are really intentional about where those discounts go, but also where they come from, right? So those discounts are being passed on to us, I think for good reason, from our national partnerships, are then being passed off. And having said that, I think what we don't want to do and don't want to perpetuate is the idea of entitlement, right? Like student athlete or someone should not ever, and we're very clear with our coaches about this, of when and how they ask for discounts, because they are not guaranteed. A lot of them in our system are optional, that they ask with curiosity, not with entitlement, right? And I think there has to be a level of confidence and of being okay with a local retailer or someone saying, actually, no, we have not opted into this program, and being okay with that too, because I think that there's both sides to it. But what we don't want to do is perpetuate this, that feeling of entitlement of just because I'm a NICA athlete, I get a discount, or just because I'm a coach, I get a discount, because I know the margins are really, really small. But again, I think if I was a retailer, carefully about the things that they need that don't need to be discounted, right? That's really good customer service. That's mechanics, or sorry, the all the wrenching work that they need to do. But I would say also being okay with saying, you know what, discounts aren't a part of what we do, but here's what we do otherwise. A part of what we do, but here's what we do otherwise.
Get ready to embrace the future of specialty bicycle retail. The NBDA Retailer Summit Central in Bentonville, Arkansas is your gateway to operational excellence, financial growth, and long-term success in an ever-evolving industry. From insightful panel discussions to hands-on workshops, you'll explore strategies for profitability, innovation, and embracing trends like e-mobility. In 2025, it's not just about selling bikes. It's about building a smarter business, engaging with your community, and setting the standard for the future of retail. Let's make it happen. Visit nbda.com to secure your spot today.
I love that answer. And I have to say that I haven't seen discounting like highly advertised on your website or even anywhere advertised.
Yeah.
And so, I applaud you in those efforts, and, thank you for answering that, and love the suggestion to focus on the services and the things you offer, that are truly one of a kind, that your shop can promote and help these kids and youth and their families with. We've talked a little bit just about how retailers can get involved. Let's say a retailer does get involved and is supporting their local team, the league in their state. Does NICA offer any sort of marketing materials or resources for retailers to promote that they do support, or do you suggest just the logo on their website? Or how can we really let people know that we are NICA friendly as a retailer?
Yeah, I think the first most important part is in the relationship, and then the distinction of scale, right? So I think when we talk from the national organization, right, the big partners, right, the Shimanos and the Shrams and the Treks and in those bigger companies, we have those benefits available, but it's a significantly different scale than I think our listener, which is the local bike shop. And I absolutely think that relationship in telling that story goes through the team and then maybe the local league, right? So I'd encourage anybody who has maybe a click higher of scale above what they can do for a local team, that they reach out to the local league, because that partnership can look a little bit different what to offer. Just to give some examples, say if there's a local retailer that has multiple locations across the state, they could perhaps partner with a league to be their neutral support person at all of the races, right? So neutral support, is really critical to all of our races, because boy, kids are good at breaking stuff. They don't mean to, but they are, right? So you could be race support, you could show up at events. So there is that level, but then the next level down, I think probably the most attainable and most important is that local team outreach. And then that's where things can get really fun and exciting, where I've seen a lot of different iterations of that local partnership with a team in a local bike shop. Like maybe they'll run a bike-a-thon together, they'll do a bike washing service together someday. Like I think that real potential to have the community impact that a local bike shop is looking for really happens best and on the most appropriate and best ROI at that team level interaction and being creative.
Yeah, I love that, and being creative for sure. I feel like NICA is great at promoting these safe, inclusive spaces for youth. For a retailer who's looking to maybe mimic or do something the same, like any high level tips you would share, like what is this? Not that I want you to give your secret sauce away, but for a retailer who is looking to grow the way that they work with youth and promote that they're a safe, inclusive space, any tips you would give?
Gosh, yeah, so many. But I think I would start maybe with the same philosophy that we approach kids with, is that you are your future customer, right? We always say in NICA is you're coaching a person, not a sport, right? You are getting to know an individual, not a buying habit, right? So I think most of the times where I see, or I've had parents come back to me or just across the organization here of the like, oh, I went into that shop and that didn't go well. It's usually somewhere based in they had an assumption of who I was or what I needed. They didn't ask. And I think that this is just good business and good customer service in general. But I think what most retailers need to understand is that the NICA kids, the NICA family is a really wide variety of rider, right? If you think about how our system is built, we are, and this is, I think, the beauty of NICA, where we have the most serious, dedicated varsity rider who's training 6 days a week, maybe has his own coach on the outside who knows everything about the latest and greatest access or whatever it is, all the way down to the beginner sixth grader who's actually never ridden a bike before, right? And so that range is really, really wide. And most often where I see the misses in that customer interaction is that they they didn't take the, or maybe they didn't take the time, or they just really didn't understand what was that family looking for. What did this kid need? What are they riding versus what are they racing on? And that's, I think, my best advice, right? Is really just understanding. They might say, I'm going to walk in, I just joined the NICA team. What do I need? Like, you should probably ask 10 more questions after that, right? Of, have you ridden before? What are your local trails like? What are your races like versus your trails, right? Because I'll say that most often, especially in places where you have, I mean, I'll give my local Teton Valley trails as an example. Around here, our riding's tough. It's technical, and most of our kids, again, these are bike people, so you'll know what I'm talking about, are probably most appropriately on like a 130, 120, or a 140, 130. Like, they're riding downhill, they're riding, harder terrain than what they're typically racing on, right? So if you say, walk into a shop and you tell them, I'm a NICA kid, help me find a bike, and you point them towards the $8,000 hardtail, you're going to miss that whole story of, what, they probably don't need an $8,000 hardtail to start with, but hardtail might actually not be the best bike choice for them, because where they spend the majority of their time riding isn't on a hardtail appropriate course. So it's things like that, right? And again, I think a lot of it's, customer service 101, but it really is understanding the family, and also inviting that mom in, because I think we all know, as a moms make most of the purchasing decisions in the family. And so making sure that she's included in all of this is a really important part of that too.
Yeah, having the patience to get to know the person and the family, and
Yeah.
invite her, and invite the mom in. I love that.
Yeah.
What about, just a minute, when we think about events? So we talked briefly about working with your local league to host events. What if there was a retailer who's just looking to host inclusive events for youth? I mean, you guys are so good at making this environment that's open for all. Any tips for a retailer that's looking to host a maintenance clinic or a team night that would really be just applicable and welcoming to youth of all ages and kind of ability levels, if you would?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Um, Most of the time, start with a general idea, what you think as an adult you should do, and then run it by a kid and let them rip it apart. That is,
I love
I mean,
that.
I say in all joking that we as adults, we have an assumption of what we think is going to be awesome and fun, and they will tell you right off the bat whether they think it is or not. So, I mean, I say it a little bit of joking, but whether it's a team event, it's a pizza party, it's a whatever it is, please involve kids in the planning of that, right? So you can reach out to the head coach, whether you have kids of your own. They're pretty blunt about what is fun and what is not, but when they get super excited is when they get to engage in the design of whatever that is. And then the best part about that is you can give work to do, right? So if you find a junior or senior, the team captain, we have grit ambassadors that are fantastic. So they are the girls and the student athlete leaders across our leagues that have chosen to take that higher level of leadership in their teams. Just reach out to a few kids, whatever it is you're planning, whether it's a team night, whether it's a fundraiser, anything, a group ride. Ask them, what would make this fun, what would make this feel more inclusive, and then hand them the microphone. Because really, if you're trying to run kid driven event, most often we get it wrong because we come at it with an adult lens.
I love that. That mimics. I
Yeah.
was talking with the Youth Cycling Foundation, and I said, "What do we need to do? How do we get?" They're like, "Let the kids plan it," and I'm like, "It makes
Yeah.
total sense."
Yeah. Yeah.
Amanda, looking at 2025, I mean, it's here. It's December
Yeah.
now. 25 is right here. Any goals that you would share? Like, how is NICA focused on connecting with more youth? Like, we need to do this. Is so important. Anything you would share?
Yeah, gosh, it is so important. I mean, I think we think about, it's not just the growth of cycling, it's the growth of healthy, happy humans. And I know I'm biased. I think many mountain bikers are, any cyclists are, but you can't find a better tool than the bike, right? To help you work out any problems, anything that you have. And so with that call to action that I talked about before, I think that's really it, right? It's thinking about how, at least from my perspective, how are we going to involve more families? How are we going to be involve more kids? So like a couple specifics about that. I think what NICA knows right now is we're somewhat fully saturated, or at least it feels like fully saturated, with the families and the kids that are what I call mountain bike adjacent, right? Or they've um, they have an uncle who mountain bikes, or they have a family member, and it's a random thing when someone who's not close to cycling is invited or joins the NICA community. So I think that's the first step for us, is widening that circle. And this is where the cycling industry, I think, absolutely can do this for us as well too, which is help us tell that story to new cycling families. That is really where we're going to see growth, and that's where we're going to see inclusion. And a couple other things we're doing is we're just focusing on growth more. Like, we know, especially at high school ages, we are competing so much more for their time and their attention than we ever have been. So I think that's through adults. I think that's through marketing. I think that's through education, but it's mostly through really intentional invitation. It's really understanding that if we're treating everyone the same, they're not going to feel as welcomed, right? So it's really, again, it's back to that customer model, is really understanding what it is they need. We need to understand better what is keeping them out of the sport. And the gatekeeping and all those things, we just have to put all that in the rear view mirror, right? More people on bikes, more kids on bikes, I think, is better for everybody. But we also understand too that's not going to come by just saying mountain biking is great, come join us, right? And so something that we're looking at, and we'll start working on next year, is developing programming for younger ages, right? So that's new for us. It probably won't be ready by next year, but we are going to develop specific programming for elementary school ages, just to help with this whole ecosystem creation. Is that, again, elementary school program will not look anything like our NICA middle school or high school programming, but we also have a recognition of the footprint of the organization and our ability that we have to impact the whole country at scale, as we feel like it's time to help get younger kids interested and engaged in the sport. So be on the lookout for that, probably by middle of next year. And again, it's all about inclusion. It was funny, I was talking to a colleague this morning about something different, but what we kept coming back to is this idea of creating a bigger pie, right? I think everyone's heard this analogy before, whereas I think whether it's the cycling industry, it's our smaller cycling programs, elite development, whatever it is, we just continue to look inward at ourselves. Like, how do we get more growth out of what we are right now? And I think just blowing that up and thinking, how do we just create more participants?
Yeah.
I think NICA is the solution. It's not the entire solution, but I do think the model and how we approach inclusion and really keep that barrier to entry as low as possible in terms of, your commitment, whether you want to race or not, is really looking at the things that NICA has done to be more inclusive, I think can be helpful for a lot of other folks that are looking to grow. But we do recognize that growth has slowed down. I mean, annually now, on average, we grow about 3% a year, 3 to 5%. I would much rather see that at a double-digit number. Some of it is, of course, for economic reasons, but also just for what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. I think more cyclists in the world is just a better thing.
Tired of turning away e-bike customers? Frustrated with the complexity of diagnosing e-bikes? Are you still swapping parts and guessing for hours? E-bike technician certification training will give you the skills to confidently diagnose any e-bike with a brushless hub motor in less than 15 minutes. Get the knowledge you need to service e-bikes, gain new customers, increase revenue, and become a professional e-bike technician. Visit the Canadian Electric Bicycle Association at cebassociation.com for more information.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have a great model in place, and I'm so thrilled to hear about the expansion to even the elementary children, because the model is set up in a way that it really does it fulfills your mission and vision and brings people into the sport in a very nice, welcoming way, gives them a clear path to fully get involved in the sport. It is, like you said, just as simple as a retailer who has a league in their state to have that conversation, that introduction, just pose the question, where are you gonna, if they're working with a youth, where are you gonna ride this bike? Have you heard of NICA? And that just kind of snowballs, right? I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just mentioned a really important thing, is if you even have if you don't want to do anything, if you don't want to shop rent, if you don't want to rent, you don't want to do anything, when you see a NICA age student athlete or potential student athlete walk into your store, just say, are you aware of NICA? Are you aware that this exists, or whatever, youth cycling program there is? Because I will tell you what keeps kids in sports is connection and community and fun. It is not the latest and greatest bike that helps in the future, but it's really getting into a community, getting that sense of belonging, getting that sense of, competence and confidence. There is a reason NICA started back in the day. And I think that story, maybe we end on something like this, but when NICA first started, some folks have probably heard the story where it was a high school math teacher who wanted to start a road team, and all the kids showed up at that team meeting and said, well, road riding's lame. We want to do mountain biking. And for a little bit, their model was they had just attended local races as a youth team, but they were attending races that were put on for adults. Right. And I think what NICA does, and it does so well, is we make everything youth centric and youth centered. Right. And we make it and we design it for them, so that it's their experience, it's their race, it's their practice, and we do our very best to keep it consistent with why they participate in sports. And that's for all those reasons: fun, connection, mentorship, but mostly they want to ride with their friends, and that's really what's going to keep them riding until they're adults.
Yeah. If for retailers listening, there's a lot of things they can do. They can simply, make sure that their team, their whole staff is energized. If there's a league in their state, they can know that, to talk about it when they're working with a customer, with a client who might be youth aged. There's other ways to get involved as well. They can, NICA is a nonprofit, right? So your donations are always graciously accepted. I'm sure you're looking for volunteers. Can you just talk through a little bit how any of our listeners, if they're even not a retailer, could support NICA efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for mentioning that, because again, for the sport that we are and the structure that we have, we need a lot of support in a lot of different ways. So you mentioned the first best one is donate to the national organization or to your local league. That's really helpful to us. What a lot of folks don't know is that we are, our organization is runs on 50% donations, right? So it's really, really important to us. We recognize that the cost of mountain biking is more expensive than other sports, right? You got the bike, the equipment, the travel. So again, we think of it as we are fundraising and take donations to keep the cost of doing business, the cost of registration, as low as possible for student athletes and for families. So that's a really important thing. Your time is very valuable as well too. So our local races sometimes take up to 100 volunteer positions just to put on one race, right? It does take an army of volunteers. So you can sign up for any volunteer position ahead of a local NICA race, and all of the individual league websites have signups for that. I'll tell you, standing at the finish line of a NICA race will reinvigorate your belief in kids. Trust me on this one. You watch these kiddos turn themselves inside out, and watching them finish a race, there's nothing better than that. So getting involved at the race level is fantastic. And then in the teams, I mean, there's a lot to do more than just riding with kids. So being a team director, helping them with registration, helping them with fundraising, helping them with Teen Trail Corps, and learning about advocacy and leadership. And then if you have time and you have the interest, you can coach. I will tell you that most beginner coaches or new coaches that I meet are really, really worried about their skill level or what they have to offer to the kids. And I would encourage anyone to think about coaching in a different perspective, right? Is what we're really looking for in great coaches. They're great humans and they're great mentors, right? So you got to think about yourself in not your mountain biking skill set, but your human skill set. Are you kind? Are you patient? Are you fun? Are you welcoming? Do you like being with kids, right? There's a lot of things when kids talk about their best coaches, it's usually character traits, like it's their personality. They were caring, they were compassionate, they pushed me to be my best. Like think about those qualities that you have before you think about, oh man, I can't teach anyone to corner, or I can't ride that Black Diamond Trail, right? So think about that. And I think again, most coaches surprise themselves with two things. One, their ability to be great coaches, because it has nothing to do with mountain biking skills. And then two, how much coaching actually does for them as an individual. I'll tell you selfishly, like most coaches I know, we get way more out of it than the kids do. And we end up going into these things thinking we're just doing it for the kids, and we are, but it just turns into the most amazing growth moment for anyone who's involved in NICA, right? Because I think our whole coach philosophy is we expect coaches to fail just alongside the kids, right? Learn how to do all these things alongside the kids. And it turns into this pretty amazing community. So I would encourage everyone to think about it in that way. If you are ready to take that leap to coaching, we've got a great online coaching ed platform to help you learn those ways. But again, lots of different ways to support, and we welcome all of it.
Yeah, I mean, you gave me goosebumps when you said about standing on the finish line, because you're right, 100%. It's a special moment watching those kids come across that finish line. I mean, we have covered a lot here, but there might be some listeners, maybe some suppliers, some brands, some retailers who have questions about, and want to get involved even deeper. Is there a contact or best way that they could contact someone from your team that you would share?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd send them straight to me. Honestly, that's the best place. So on our website, you can see nationalmtb.org, but also my email address is pretty simple, amanda@nationalmtb.org. And I would also encourage anybody to reach out with offers of help or just ways that we can do things better, right? Because again, we also understand, for as much as I spoke about ecosystem, right, and how important every member of the NICA community is, we also have an understanding that we have a bigger impact on folks than we could ever recognize, right? So if there's something that we are doing that we could do better, that we could change, or if you have ideas or things that are, annoying or preventing your business to grow, I want to hear about them. Because again, we are, for me, it's an honor. I feel like I'm a steward of this organization, certainly not the leader, right? And I think we always can do better if we hear from more members of the community. So I'd encourage people to reach out with those ideas as well too, because we're a part of this community that everyone here is a good part of.
Excellent. Amanda, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, for your support of the National Bicycle Dealers Association. It's been a pleasure working with your team. I hope our retailers, our listeners, found this insightful. Amanda, keep up the good work, the great work.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning into Bicycle Retail Radio, presented by the National Bicycle Dealers Association. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, please like, subscribe, or leave us a review. Sharing this podcast with your friends helps us reach more listeners and continue to bring you the best content. Remember, we host 2 shows per week with ever-changing guests and fresh content to keep you both informed and inspired. The National Bicycle Dealer Association is committed to providing valuable events, webinars, and opportunities for industry education and connection. Stay up to date by visiting nbda.com to see our event calendar. Special thanks to Francis Abbott for the promotional graphics for today's episode. If you're interested in advertising on Bicycle Retail Radio or have a guest suggestion, visit nbda.com to learn more. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Bicycle Retail Radio.